The exercise was to understand whether something could be done at the bachelor and meet educational specifications and meet the financial targets the town has set. It's important to remember that the budget we'll talk through excludes the cost of any compliance with the Historic District Commission and any requests they would make. Things that could be like a pitched roof, slate roof, brick on the exterior. We have tried to account for that with a larger contingency, but we cannot get a firm number there until we actually present a plan that's been approved to the Historic District Commission, and then we would be able to get their feedback. We've been done informally so far. This new building would have 29 classrooms, including dedicated spaces for art and music and computer. It's important to note that students will be relocated for the 2-year duration of the project. So you'll have to find a place to house the students. I'm going to go through the next pages relatively quickly. They're really just to give everyone a flavor for what the building would look like. You can see on the site plan the old building right here. That would remain. This is where the annex is today. That would be torn down and a new structure put in its place and then added in a couple of directions to create the roughly 65,000 square footage of space that would be required to house the students on the site. There would be some parking. Preliminarily, you put parking here and some drop-offs. Those would be subject to some change as you actually went forward to schematic design. What would it look like? This is an elevation from the side, very rough, to give people a sense for what it would look like. This coming up Park Street. And I'll skip through the floor plans relatively quickly. This starts with the top floor of the old batch today, and you can just sort of see how the classrooms would lay out. Moving down to the 3rd floor, which would then connect over to the new addition. The 2nd floor, where you can see the new addition, and where preliminarily you might put a cafeteria and gym. And then finally to the ground level, where you can see the rest of the plan. Relocation is an important aspect. Relocation would cost roughly $3 million. If you think about the current bachelor community, the school committee, as they've looked at relocation options, and the superintendent have got to split it into 3 parts. The kindergarten and 1st graders who would go to the Hood School, where modulars would be added. Grades 2 through 4, which would go to this building right here, the Murphy Center. The land out back would be become a modular city, basically, and link into the existing facilities here, for the cafeteria and plumbing and sewer, septic. And then the 5th grade would go to the middle school, where 4 modulars would be added to the middle school. One other quick note, the pre-K would actually stay at the Little. It had been planned to move to the Hood, space permitted. What will all this cost? The bachelor renovation plan will in total cost the town roughly $20 million. And then we step through this in a little bit of detail. First part is the construction cost, which our architects, in combination with their estimators that they use on projects, estimate this would be $12 million. And that includes a 15% construction contingency. The second part are the soft costs. We have to pay for the substantial amount of design and project management that our architects will need to do in the project. We've got furniture and equipment, technology, and various other costs to actually complete the building. Finally, there's relocation. We talked about the $3 million cost. We would actually lease modulars for 2 years because that would be most cost effective. We'd actually have to spend about $1 million to install them, get utilities hooked up, modify them, etc. That brings the total cost to $18 million. Now, that $18 million is theoretically reimbursable. The state has some rules, though, as how they think about reimbursement. The state has a formula that's relatively detailed. This square footage that the state uses is based on pupils and an amount excess above the number of students. This is not actually the size of the building we would, in fact, instruct. It would actually be 65,000 square feet, but the state formula is purely for reimbursement, so just to be clear, since that's different. But that actually yields a reimbursable cost of roughly $12.5 million. The difference is $5 million, and that is money that the town would appropriate and not be reimbursed for from the state. We would then have to add the financing costs, which we've estimated with the town finance director, which would roughly be the total amount here, $16 million over the course of the 20-year bond and 5-year note. So the total cost would be $34 million. Then there's the state share in its reimbursement. And we base that actually on 60.4%, which is the current rate for projects of 54% with adding some credit for maintenance and a few other items. It is not a 68% number. This is what we believe, and we can talk later about the state's current plans here. But we believe this is the best that we would achieve. So the total cost of the town would be $20 million. On a tax basis, if you think about the average tax rate impact over 25 years, you can see it's roughly going to be a couple $100 per house, depending upon the valuation. The peak year would be roughly $100 or more above what the average year would be. So that's the Batchelder School. Now to switch to Swan Pond for a second and add some more background there. This would be entirely new construction, so versus the Batchelder, which is renovation. It's a roughly 40-acre site controlled by the school department. It was actually acquired as a school site over 10 years ago. I'm sorry, 30 years ago. It's located off of Swan Pond Road. What would happen is 12 acres would be cleared for the building and the fields. We can talk more about some of the engineering that's been done on that site already, but we do have a location for septic on that site. And it would again provide 29 classrooms, so functionally this school would provide the sufficient space for the school population. The students would stay in the Batchelder until it was actually complete. Again, we have some detail. This detail is different in that it's schematic design. The town has spent more time with its architects developing this, so this is a little bit more fleshed out. This is a rough design of what the school would look like on the site. And then what the exterior view would be. And then the floor plans, it's a simpler floor plan because it's only on 2 levels rather than 4. There's a second. Going to cost as well, the total cost here would be roughly $12 million. And I'll step through this a little bit quicker. Our architects, again, have estimated the cost with estimators for this project would be roughly $11 million, and that would include a 10% construction contingency. We have soft costs, which would be, again, furniture and equipment, design fees, etc. But there is no relocation. There are a few other improvements to Hannah-Brady's Way, but the total project cost for Swan Pond would be $14 million. That is a lot closer to the amount the state would actually reimburse. The state's reimbursement formula for Swan Pond would be roughly $13 million. So the non-reimbursable cost is only $1 million. Then you have the financing, which would be slightly under $13 million to get to the total cost of 27. Then you subtract the state share. We've assumed a slightly lower reimbursement rate because the state formulas favor the renovation. And the Batchelder project, while 2/3 new, 1/3 renovation, does benefit slightly on the reimbursement rate based on the current guidelines. But in total, the cost of the town would be $12 million. And again, moving to a tax rate, it would be roughly $100, $200, depending upon the assessment of the house, and about $50 or $100 more in the peak year, which would only occur for a year or two in each of these projects. So that's the tax rate impact for Swan Pond. Again, this is average over 25 years. So to sum up, as the school building committee looked at all the factors that members of the town should think about in evaluating the options, there are a couple things that stuck out in our mind as important. First was cost. Everyone talks about cost, obviously very important. It's a lot of money. There's the relocation plan. People need to be comfortable where the students are going to go, how they're going to be housed during whatever project we undertake. There's a historic impact. The Swan Pond School will be located away from the town center. Renovating the Batchelder is taking place in the historic district of the town. There's the design. The design flexibilities we'll talk about vary between the two sites. What the design will actually yield in terms of the school is different, and people should understand the differences and decide which they prefer. There's a location in town. The Batchelder is obviously in the center of town. Swan Pond will be on the east side. And open space. The impact of open space, whether that be existing community open space or open space in terms of natural wilderness. We talked about cost as being an important issue. Just to summarize, the total cost to the town, principal and interest over 25 years for renovating the Batchelder will be $20 million. For Swan Pond, it'll be $12 million. Now, on a per square footage basis, these numbers for construction are actually very similar. So the amount purely just to build the building on that site, whether you build it in the Batchelder and renovate the Batchelder or build it new at Swan Pond, the construction cost will be roughly the same. So the construction cost will not be that different between these two locations. It's important to remember that at the Batchelder, there's several $1 million of relocation cost, and that is not reimbursed because of the state's reimbursement limits. And so that makes the Batchelder cost significantly higher than Swan Pond. The tax impact is $218 versus $132 for Swan Pond. To summarize the rest of the factors quickly, we talked about cost already. Relocation, if you renovate the batch, there will be 2 years of relocation required. There will be no relocation required at Swan Pond. The historic, in terms of historic impact, both the Historic District Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals will need to approve changes to the Batchelder site. That is not true at Swan Pond. In terms of design is a very subjective sort of criteria. One way to think about it is purely the number of floors of the site of the facility. If you renovate the Batchelder, it will be a 4-floor facility because you need to connect to the existing building. At Swan Pond, we believe that would be a 2-floor building. The location in town, center versus east end, people have different preferences. And finally, open space. And there's going to be less open space regardless of which plan is chosen by the citizens of the town. It will either be less in town center or less at Swan Pond. Either way, in the short term, that would be true. And that's it.
All right, well, thank you, John. Appreciate the information. And just to clarify, now that's the SBC's responsibility in dealing with these two issues is purely to bring forward the information. Are you guys actually going to be recommending one plan over the other?
We do not recommend. We provide the information to the school committee, which then ultimately makes a decision as to what plan they want to propose to the state and ask for reimbursement on.
Excellent, thank you. All right. Okay, now that we've had the presentation, we're going to open it up to questions. And so I'll ask the first question. And based on something that Jonathan said in his presentation about going before the Historic District Commission, I'm going to go right at Howard and ask basically, has the Historic District Commission in any way taken a vote or approved one or the other plan, or in this case, the batch renovation plan, which is really what affects your group, if I understand it correctly. And if you have, can you give some basis on the decisions that you've made?
Certainly, Todd. Where we are right now is a little more complicated than it might seem, but let me summarize. First of all, we actually do not have an official proposal on our desk, so we were not able to take a formal vote. And the reason for that goes back to what Jonathan was saying earlier. We have preliminary designs on the batch reuse and addition. We do not have schematic designs. And since that can change the slope of a roof, the amount of the footprint, the materials that are used, those are all things that the Historic District Commission has to consider when deciding whether a plan is appropriate or not. However, knowing the situation at hand and knowing the political nature of everything going on right now, we did take what I will call a sense of the commission vote of sorts to have a discussion a number of months ago. And we did this before the town meeting at which this was discussed. Of the 7 members present, which is the entirety of our board, all 7 are opposed as it stands today to the proposal to expand and renovate the batch for a number of reasons. First of all, it is the footprint of what it takes on the space in the common area. There is space that the town uses. There is the way the design of the area looks. There is a series of things in that nature that are a problem.